I already said it, and I'll say it to you. It's President Trump. This Marco Rubio doesn't like Latin America and even less Brazil. He's a frustrated Latin American.
The president of Brazil decided to attack the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio, calling him a frustrated Latino. The statement provoked a strong reaction in Washington and increased diplomatic tension between the two countries.
Economic prosperity that go hand in hand. It's an amazing story that basically, other than Nicaragua, other than Cuba, obviously other than Venezuela, remains with some challenges. And of course, Brazil, although they're in the midst of an election cycle, and to some extent the current government in Colombia as well, at least the president's been problematic. But generally speaking, it is now a region filled with American allies, American-friendly leaders, and an America-friendly direction.
Many analysts believe that this statement was the trigger that the Americans were waiting for to legitimize a tougher action against the PCC and the Comando Vermelho. The episode exposes the fragility of the bilateral relationship and puts Brazil in a delicate position before the international community. Until then, the White House had been keeping diplomacy intact, without any direct attacks on vessels or structures linked to criminal organizations. By challenging Marco Rubio, who is considered Donald Trump's right-hand man and has been mentioned as a possible successor to the presidency of the United States, the Brazilian president showed desperation and total concern with the decisions of the Secretary of State.
I don't know if he was born in Cuba. It seems to me that he wasn't even born in Cuba. It seems to me that he's the son of people who were born in Cuba. So his behavior regarding Latin America, I even hope that our Senate, Jacques Wagner, will respond. He said yesterday in the Senate that he's very happy because they're managing to do it. Latin America, with the exception of Brazil, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Colombia, is making Latin America much, much closer to the United States.
Thank you. The attempt to discredit the Secretary of State who leads efforts against international drug trafficking reinforces the perception of isolation at the Planalto Palace. June 5th is approaching, and this date, which was set as the beginning of American operations against the Brazilian cartels, has been keeping the country's top leadership awake at night. Welcome to life in the barracks. The designation of June 5th as the starting point for a massive offensive against the Brazilian factions reinforces the idea that Washington is preparing something unprecedented in the fight against the PCC and the Red Command. The plan already existed, and the recent statements by the current Brazilian leader only gave more legitimacy for the Pentagon to move forward. This date, June 5th, could become a turning point in the fight against drug trafficking. In this context, attacks against vessels and faction structures can happen at any moment. The military power of criminal organizations, comparable to that of regular armies, requires a coordinated and high-level response. The Southern Command is mobilizing in the Pacific and the Caribbean Sea, preparing to carry out swift and precise operations if necessary. The expectation is that in the coming days, tension will rise and faction leaders will begin to be arrested en masse.
I passed by tech. Just let me know when to pull up and pick it up so the guys can paint it here.
The voice sounded like just another routine conversation, but for the civil police, it was the mechanism of a structure moving more than 450 million reais for the Red Command. The target wasn't just an isolated criminal, he was the financial brain of the faction, the man responsible for laundering money for the most violent traffickers in Rio. But behind him, there was an even bigger name, established as the leader of the Red Command and the true architect of the scheme that moved more than 450 million reais. The DRE's investigation lasted more than a year and revealed a sophisticated scheme. Recycling companies and scrapyards operating as fronts, split deposits, fake invoices, and pass-through bank accounts.
This material for me. With each message, the civil police were already tracking. There, order this material for me.
Each message was an order. Each item was a piece of the scheme that the civil police were already tracking.
The police were already tracking. The civil police were already tracking. Can you put 300 in that account, man? It's for my employee. He's working at the construction site there. They were tracking.
The scheme couldn't sustain itself alone. The investigation identified the use of frontmen to move the money, hide assets, and keep the structure operating, including family members involved in supporting the criminal organization.
I'm going to send you more pics so you can speed things up and put up a lookout.
The money kept circulating until the civil police arrived. 24 people arrested, simultaneous operations in 6 states, and a financial structure of more than 450 million reais in collapse.
The Southern Command, responsible for U.S. military operations in Latin America, had been intensifying training in tropical and coastal environments. These maneuvers are not just symbolic, but show that Washington is ready to act in different scenarios. The preparation includes amphibious landings, maritime interdictions, and logistical support to Allied forces. The advancement of these activities indicates that Brazil could be the target of coordinated operations after June 5th. The CIA also plays a central role in this context. Undercover agents are already operating in Brazilian territory, gathering strategic information and monitoring the financial and logistical movements of the factions. This silent infiltration ensures that if President Donald Trump authorizes an incursion, the United States will have enough data to neutralize leaders and criminal bases. The presence of the American intelligence agency on Brazilian soil confirms that the country is under constant surveillance. The military coalition formed by the Shield of the Americas further strengthens this scenario. Film worked out. With allies such as Paraguay, Argentina, Bolivia, and Guyana, the United States has created a ring of military and intelligence cooperation around Brazil. This network facilitates joint operations and increases the pressure on the Brazilian government. The statement against Marco Rubio only intensified the perception that Brazil is not aligned with regional efforts. Even so, it is not certain that the United States will carry out military operations inside Brazil. There is a possibility that they may choose to provide military, logistical, and technological support to state police forces. This strategy would be less politically risky, but just as effective. Having local police forces as allies is a viable alternative for Washington in the diplomatic context. Some governors have already expressed support for the American offensive. In São Paulo, Tarcísio de Freitas declared full support for the initiatives against the cartels.
It's an opportunity. I think we see this as an opportunity because once a government like the United States treats the PCC as a terrorist organization, and that's actually what they are, it becomes easier. The path to cooperation is open so that we can integrate intelligence, so that we can bring in financial resources, so that we can make the fight even more effective.
This alignment shows that part of the state leadership sees international cooperation as a way to contain the advance of the factions. That's why internal support can make it easier to implement joint measures. By offending Marco Rubio in a public statement, the Brazilian president gave the United States even more reason to move forward. The episode exposes not only Brazil's diplomatic fragility, but also the urgency of a coordinated response against criminal organizations that have already crossed borders. The tension between the Planalto Palace and the White House may mark the beginning of a new phase in the fight against drug trafficking. Since Brazil is not taking federal-level measures to contain the rise in crime, international forces are moving to mitigate the tentacles of organized crime. But will the United States really confront the Brazilian factions by deploying the Southern Command, or will they stick to economic sanctions and political pressure? Leave your opinion here in the comments and join the debate. Take advantage of the super discount while it lasts. It's only for a limited time. Here at Vida No Quartel, you stay up to date with everything happening in the military world. Leave your like, subscribe, and watch one of the videos that's appearing on your screen. Forward, combatants. See you next time.